Ally. An ally is a music community that combines the skills of Peruvian, Brazilian, and jazz artists living in Sydney. They collaborate, create, and inspire each other to produce original music that straddles both Latin and jazz soundscapes. So I'll introduce you to them all in a moment, but I'd just like to thank Alexander Frendo for the setup and the sound today, and for Brendan Smiley for coordinating this series. So, our performers today are George Rahust on percussion, trombonist James Greening, who we know from recently performing on the stage, pianist Ed Goya, bassist David Quinn, and the inimitable Gai Bryant on saxophone.
Well, thanks for coming. I hope that you're going to enjoy what we're going to play. I really do. The first two, come in, don't hang there. Come on. I'll share my lunch with you.
Yeah.
We're going to do a composition of Thelonious Monk called Monk's Dream, but done as a bulerias. So, and if anyone at all has heard any of the works of Jerry Gonzalez, there's a particular album of his called Rumba Monk, which is really worth getting, and it has his ideas of how to Latinise monk, and this is one of them. So, up to us, we start.
Oh, excellent.
Want to answer?
Two,
There's also some other little bits, but maybe I'll read the other little bits in case you stick around for questions and answers afterwards. Okay. interesting sections in it, and I'm more than happy to have a ramble about that if you want to ask me. Okay. go,
Very
and
good
the
choice.
rest of us were going, no, we're going to the head. So, in true jazz fashion, he just decided to go with the flow. So, this is another festival. It's also, some of the harmony is based on a Wayne Shorter tune called Paradox. I don't know if any of you know it, but some of it is there.
That would explain my difficulty in this.
If, so we'll just start. building went up in smoke and the poor guy passed as a result of it. But his nickname among most of the local community used to call him the last parata. So
Which means? Which means
well,
in English what?
last pirate?
The last pirate?
Because he looked like a pirate.
All right.
Then, yeah, that's it. But instead of doing something Puerto Rican with it, we actually went to Brazil. So the underlying, well, one of the underlying rhythms in this one is a maracatu, and the other one is a plena. I think, unless you're going to do something else.
Yeah, but
Anyway, that might be the question.
I need to just check something on the form of the law.
Okay. All right.
Sorry about this.
you want to study? I studied or how do you want to study?
16 hours up here and then
Go best in the study? Yeah.
excellent.
Sorry.
Growing. It is the 16 bars of B. 16 bars of B and then take to the form. Is that cool? Talk about it now.
Yeah, it's been a while since we played this, so everyone's got to remember. And for some of us up here, we're starting to get long in the tooth, so it's actually a necessity. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
people could go where they wanted to.
Could we bring the-
the
oh, he's gone.
changes actually come in on cue so that they can stay in that space for as long as they like. There's somewhere I've just got it on a bass, like a bass of F or something like that. They can stay there forever if they want to. If they want to kind of just, I wrote those changes in so that we had something to signal each other by, so that we could kind of go, yeah, okay, like I'm done, I'm ready to go, I'm ready to hand over to the next person. So it's just like a little signalling section, which is sometimes works out to be a great thing, especially when we don't get to actually rehearse a lot quite often, you know, because somebody's doing a show like Giorgio's in Michael Jackson at the moment, and at one stage James was in another musical.
Yeah. What was it called? 80s Town.
That's it, 80s Town, which was brilliant. And
I know one, yeah. Yeah.
so cool.
80s Town.
There you go.
The hat. It was a good hat.
It was good.
Damn.
So often, you know, like, and you may not have played the tune for a year, so you've got to kind of remember what it was, and sometimes as we're going through these things just end up changing. Like you'll be at the sound check and someone has an idea and they go, look, I don't like the way that ended last time, can we go here? So all of us have got bits of blue, green ink everywhere and bits of pencil, but yeah, so today you got what you got. I don't know what you get next week, is what I'm saying. So there is a certain openness to it. Sometimes it's nicer just to hang with the chord progression, if it's a nice chord progression and you like it. Esperanzando, that one, I think, for me, I think that's actually one of my favourite harmonic progressions, and I'd rather just be in that rather than take it somewhere else. Are you experimenting with different things?
Some of them have to write compositions for a subject at the moment, so they're thinking about what a composition is, and how it can be, and where it can go. So.
Does it go and get performed? The composition? It's
We're
simple.
writing for another student in the subject.
Alright, cool.
So we're writing
Really simple, couple of simple ideas that I try and think about, right? So say I'm going to book someone to do some work at my house, right? You either give them free slather or you tell them exactly what you want. And you ask them how long is it going to take and what's it going to cost. Everybody's used to that, aren't they? Cool? So when it comes to compositions, from my perspective, I want my musicians to be as successful as possible. So the chart or the concept has to be very clear and simple, right? And then the beauty is in the performance of that, right? The challenge is that we get excited about more complex ideas. But as soon as you do that, you're opening up a potential for complete confusion, all right? So, and I've been fortunate, I've played, you can go and check this thing out, it's called Kranerg. It was one of my life-changing experiences with playing this piece of Iannis Xenakis, all right?
Wow.
It was one of the most intense experiences in my entire life. Hour and 15 minutes of complete in your face, right? Amazingly complex, right? And that was an amazing experience, but it takes a huge amount of organisation and rehearsal. Massive amounts of rehearsal, right? If you want something to work really quickly, make it simple, right? And if you're working on compositions, that's, in my opinion, that's where the gold's at. How you make a very simple thing magical, all right? I've got one piece that I've written which I can get hit by a bus now because I wrote it, right? 14 bars long, it's got a melody and a bass line, and it's all on a pentatonic scale. And everybody that ever plays it goes, oh man, I love that song. You with me? So my goal in life is to get simpler. You know, it may not have looked like it at times, yeah?
My goal in life is to make James's life really difficult by getting more complex.
And that's a creative friction, by the way. Have you heard that expression? It's a gorgeous kind of concept. That one idea is pushing this way and the other idea is pushing this way. Interestingly, maybe when we talk about rhythms, I'm segueing to you because it's like I would like them to ask questions to you. Did you enjoy the drumming?
Oh,
Cool. Why? Why? Has he got chops to burn? Yeah. Cool. But is that the reason? No. It's his clarity, right? And he's playing complex ideas. And for me, I'm listening to this dynamic friction within his grooves. And I'm trying to cut to the simplest thing of like, oh, while this is going on. Yeah? Because when I can think simply, then I can play. If it's complex, I can't play. It's just garbage comes out. Right? So I don't know. Do you want to show him some stuff? He looks cool. Because Gai has used some words that I had never met before I joined the band. So, festeo is one of the words. What was another? Can you show them something?
Oh, festejo.
And I don't even say it
I
right.
guess we should actually say that like some of these styles like festejo and landau actually have a music and a dance style. And although I'm a bit more clued up on Cuban styles in this manner, I'm not sure if they actually came about at exactly the same time. Do you know?
It was a form of communication.
Yeah, so it sort of has, I guess they've both influenced each other.
Is this
Anyway, off you go. Go, Georgia.
So festejo is from Afro-Peruvian music. It's so you guys know the box, the cajon? I'm pretty sure everyone's not seen a box now.
You sit on it, play it.
Yeah, that instrument is from Peru. So that was my first thing when I was 3 years old playing. So from all the traditional stuff, you have the festejo, which we play. We have el landó, which is also Afro-Peruvian, which is a few styles that we played in this band. You play it on the cajon, then you play also there's the conga pas, the bongo pas, the cowbell pas, the shaker, the claves, bells, everything. And then pretty much your interpretation of it is on the kit. So this is the way I play, like I hear it. Although I could use more bells and other things, but it's festejo is like a faster version. Landó is a slower, but it's a bit, the timing is like James said, it's like 2 numbers in one. So the landó is like the first one, the slow one, so we'll be like 1, 2, 3, 4. So on the cajon is this. So then from there you stretch it, because in Afro-Peruvian music you play 4, 5, 6, 3, and 2 together. Because the dancers dance in 2, you count it in 6, the cajon plays it in 4, and then the singers stretch it in 5. Yeah? So all that, when you grow up with it, it just becomes part of you, and then when you study it, it becomes more fun, because then from there you can stretch it on purpose. Over there, the street guys, they stretch it but without knowing. But when you study it, you can stretch it on purpose, and then you can go in and out. So festejo is like, it's in 6, the same thing, but it's just faster, right? So on cajon, we're like. Right, so that's the faster version. The most important thing in Afro-Peruvian music is the middle triplet, yeah? So in 4, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the most important pose when you play the Afro music. Internalize that, understand the rest, and then you can breathe.
And in your composition that you're going to do, if you're going to use some of that, you've got to remember to use that accent of that middle triplet for the bass line. That's absolutely crucial. bass figure has to incorporate that.
Yeah.
And if you can, put it in the melody as well.
So this is not my culture. So when I first started, and sorry, did you see all this? You see this stuff? The white stuff with the black stuff on it, right? There's so many ways to try and write that down. You're going to think of it in 2, you're going to think of it in 4, you're going to think of it in 6, you're going to think of it in 12, you know what I mean? So when I first come to look at the chart, and then Giorgio played, I go, and then I have to figure out how Gai was thinking about what Giorgio was playing. And by the way, Giorgio's not on every gig. Julio's here sometimes, and then there's Cajon, and one time his cousin was on bongo, right? And the feel of it was the same rhythms, but felt completely different. So I have to go, whoa, until I can get it to the simple thought, and then I can play. Otherwise, you can't play, right? This simple idea, if I can drive anything home, gold's in the simple, yeah? He's a master of this. He's dedicated his whole life to this, and he grew up with it, yeah? Well, I'm from Newcastle. Yeah? So it's like, yeah, I could dedicate my life to try and just learn this style, and some musicians do that, and it's not even their culture, but they dedicate themselves to that. One of the things I love about the jazz tradition is that I can be a visitor. I can visit. I can go anywhere in the world and visit any culture, and I can figure out a way to engage with the musicians. If I can understand the fundamentals, not the complexities, I'll never understand them. Yeah? Cool? Is this cool?
Yeah.
Right.
I was going to actually ask you about these dance styles, rhythms, but what I'll do is, because I can hear you talking about them, but I can't quite write them down, I'll send you an email, and if you just send me the spellings of Festivo and some of those, and
Absolutely.
I'll put them up on my door if any of you
Absolutely.
Right.
put them up and things.
So there was styles. We played
We
maracatu, which is from Brazil.
Yeah, but you see, I don't know what
But
you're
I
saying.
can do
We
that.
played
Oh.
Abuelias.
It's okay. I'm gonna.
No, but it's fine too. So
They're
Abuelias
gonna
from
get it.
Spain. They'll get it, but you know, Abuelias from Spain, maracatu from Brazil. We played Bayón from Brazil, Landó, Festejo from Peru.
Yeah.
And we play a plena in as well.
Yeah, which is Puerto Rican.
There's a lot. And
Cool.
she knows a lot because
And
she
I
knows
never
a lot
met
of us.
any of them. And I've played in Afro-Cuban bands for 40 years, right? And I've never met any of these rhythms. It's like I come to the first rehearsal going,
Any more quick questions?
How did you come across it, Gai? How did you, because you're a Sydney jazz player, I know.
Yeah. Well, it
Yes,
started with me taking a deep dive into Afro-Cuban music, and I had gone backwards and forwards to Cuba for a number of years, and then I did a PhD on it. So I started to really spend a lot of time with a couple of percussionists. One of them is Busto Perdido, who's in his 80s now, and I think he is responsible for setting up the percussion school within ISA, which is their kind of equivalent of the conservatorium. And things are just handed down. So he is a font of information, and in his earlier years he also travelled. So he'd travel to Venezuela and he'd travel to Peru and so on. So we would have chats about these different music styles and say, oh, you know, and you can use it in this, and then he'd start going, blah, 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 and I sort of think, wow, okay. So fast forward, Giorgio and I start playing together, and that was in a Cuban-based music group. And I put together a 20-piece Afro-Cuban group called Palacio de la Rumba, which is something that I hope gets funded because I want to bring it here next year and for you guys to play in it. So we're just going to bring some core players and get you guys to be in it, sing with it, do percussion, write for it. But through the playing of that, we started talking about different ideas and different things, and Giorgio started playing me different music that he enjoyed, and said, why don't you write something based on this? So you can blame him. And so that started this journey, and from there I started to step my toe in the water, and that's really all I've done. I've just so scratched the surface. There's just nothing, I haven't even gone to any depth, I don't think, yet. So yeah, there's so much more to go.
Yeah.
Because there's so many instruments, there's different ways that people play them. Like even today, with Giorgio playing the drum kit, so he's playing various cajon, and for the landau there's a donkey's jaw with the teeth still in that they use as a percussion instrument. And there's other hand percussion in there, so he's putting all of that on the kit in different ways. Then there's sometimes when they all get together and they bring all this stuff to a rehearsal, and you actually get to hear the real deal, and it's like, wow, that's completely different as well. And I know that one of the problems that we had probably, I mean this is before I was an active player, but in the 70s, Usto Diaz, who used to be at this university, I think. Usto Diaz?
What's the first name?
Usto Diaz? Don't know. Anyway, there's a paper that comes from this university with his name on it, so I figured he must have been here at some point. Fantastic guitarist, and he set up a venue in Newtown called La Peña, and a lot of people from the Latin community used to go there. Some people didn't play an instrument before they went to this venue, but his deal was that he wanted everybody to start learning everybody else's culture. So you'd have this kind of United Nations of the Latinos, if you will, up on stage every night, and they would be adapting things from what they remembered it sounded like at home to what they could do here. So we've got a lot of that kind of stuff in the music as well, which changes the way you think about it. It often changes the sound of things. I'm not quite sure where I was going with that, but anyway, it was a thought.
That's all right. I just wanted, you know, how do you make that connection, and particularly someone who grew up in Australia that was a lot
Absolutely.
lighter than it is now.
Absolutely. Like I am just so much,
you know.
I am just the gringa of all gringers. I am like as white as rice. And so his culture, your cultures are just so much richer than mine. So I feel quite envious that you've got all this stuff that you get to hook into, and I've got nothing.
Yeah, but look what you did. You have to
I
recognise
have to hook
people.
into his culture.
It's all about mentors. Sorry, it's all about mentors. Universities are an attempt to be mentors.
True.
All right, in my opinion, only my opinion. All right. So I've been fortunate that I've met amazing musicians my entire life since I was 7, and I had the intelligence somehow to recognise the really heavy ones. So I followed their direction, and it never finishes. This is what I love about what you said. It can be depressing because there's always more, or it's inspiring because there's always more. That's your decision. But if you're getting mentoring and you're getting fed by other people's enthusiasm, then you can continue. Otherwise, it's too lonely and it's too hard. That's for me.
And there are people out there doing amazing things. There's a Brazilian guitarist who lives here now, and he does all this stuff, all these amazing sort of like samba melodies, and he's got them across hip hop loops and beats, and he'll have he does these beat loops and just builds it all up. So he's almost like a one-man band, but it's awesome what he's inspired. And
What's
so
his
you
name,
get to
Gai?
hear something like that. I'm trying to remember it.
Write to me when you do.
I
then
will.
you can come and
I
play.
will, because I think he lives in GY, and I know he plays down there a lot, and I actually did some gigs with him, so I'll have it somewhere.
Tiago?
But,
Tiago?
yeah, Thiago De Luca.
Oh, Tiago!
Thiago, yeah.
Good.
And he's just does some awesome things, all in a